All right, so let's get started. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. This is the first of the series that we're planning to do based on security. Most of you know me. Some of you know Mo Hassan, who is going to be presenter on this webinar. Our company does a lot of work with security, Office 365, SharePoint, Citrix. Most of you worked with me before personally on a lot of the projects. Lately, security, as you know, is the hottest topic, of discussion in IT field. And a lot of our customers asking us, how do we know we are secure? Especially, how do we know that we are secure in Office 365 environment, and specifically, how we are secure in Office 365 environment in regards to personally identifiable information, otherwise known as PII. So our guest speaker, and my good personal friend, is Mo Hassan. He's a SharePoint virtuoso. He's going to do the presentation, most of it, and then at the end, we're going to go into demo, which I will do. With that, Mo, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself. Mo?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Roman, for the introduction. Again, my name is Mo Hassan, and I'm the Senior Managing Partner at Intupower. And I'm also author of the book, The Truth About SharePoint, Essentials for Executives and Managers. And what we do at Intupower is we work very closely with Roman and Sequentia because we provide training and development, because as you get your solutions and you get your security and everything else up and running, it's important for your users to know how to use it properly. And we have this awesome little saying that we have about SharePoint, which is, it doesn't matter where to click if your team doesn't get along. And so there's a lot that's involved on the training and development side. And thank you for joining us this morning. We've got a fun, action-filled 45 minutes for you. And today we're going to be discussing a few different things. We're going to give you some insights into what are some common security issues. What do you need to be aware of in your businesses, in your organizations, in your teams? And then we're going to jump into a little bit about who needs DLP, which is the Microsoft Data Loss Prevention. And then we're going to get into a little bit about how DLP actually works, and we're going to talk through some of that. And then I'm going to talk you through some of the SharePoint best practices that are available. And then we'll jump into a demo, and Roman's going to show you hands-on what it looks like in the environment, what are some of the things that him and his team configure for you regarding the Microsoft Data Loss Prevention protocols. And then we're going to show you how it actually applies to things like OneDrive, SharePoint, and then Microsoft Office itself. And within Office, we can spend hours and hours going through Excel, Word, PowerPoint, and Outlook to show you that. But we'll give you a couple of quick demonstrations so you can get a taste for what that's like. And then we'll chat a little bit about some of the solutions that we create for clients. And I'm sure Roman will share that this is a very common solution that he does for clients. It's very, very popular, very exciting. And then we'll give you an opportunity to ask some questions in the last 10, 15 minutes so that we can get all of your questions addressed. You'll also notice that there is a group chat window that's available. So during the session, if you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them into the group chat, and that way we'll be happy to address them as we go along. And certainly at the end of the session, we'll make sure that we answer your questions as well. So let's go ahead and get right on into it and talk a little bit about what's going on out there and what are the common security concerns that organizations have. And historically in the past, when we've considered security, it's really been about external security. And of course, at Sequentia, they provide a lot of great solutions for how to protect against external attacks through penetration testing, firewalls, both on the software side and hardware side. And there's a lot of things that we can do on that side. And it's one of those like minimum requirements, right? No matter where you are, you've got to have that security from the external side. But more interestingly enough is that for the last 9 years, phishing and malware have actually been the top method of cybersecurity attacks. And this is a little bit different in the way that we've been thinking about security, because it's not just about people from the outside trying to come in, but rather it's your staff doing things that may occur as innocent, But then what actually ends up happening is that security gets violated because they did something that they thought was innocent, or they clicked on an email, or they did something else, and they've been giving out personal information either about themselves or clients. And so this is really the part that we're going to be chatting about today, is how do you actually exercise protection so that where your users can sort of protect themselves. And this falls into two different ways. One is through the software here in DLP that we're going to get into, and the second part is the training. What's something else that's very interesting is that this is some information here from the big dog themselves at Microsoft, and it's about that the median number of days that attackers stay dormant within a network detection is over 200. And so that means you've already got people in your system, you've already got things that are going on in your environment, but when you're actively monitoring it, you don't see it. So you need to have new ways of protecting your data, new ways of protecting your financial information than you've ever considered in the past. And so this is one of the big reasons why DLP has become so popular. And of course, depending on your SharePoint edition, you do want to make sure that with Office 365, you do have level E3 or higher. Again, it's going to be E3 or higher that you need on Office 365 to take advantage of DLP. And of course, the team at Sequentra can help you with your purchase and making sure you have the right user license and all that other fun stuff. And this particular fact I found very fascinating. This data has been verified across the world. It's not just in the United States, but 59%, that's more than half of your staff, will steal proprietary data when they are fired or when they quit. Okay, so this is a very interesting fact that people are actually stealing data when they're either fired or when they quit. So you want to make sure that you have protocols in place that when an employee is let go or when they resign, that you've got to handle that stuff. And even when you set up those protocols to say that, okay, we're going to take your user account on Active Directory or ADFS, and it'll be disabled. Well, was that enough? Or what happened in that time before that account was disabled? So for instance, usually when a user quits or when one of your employees quits, they plan that out ahead of time. And now with the data loss protection, you can actually defend against this long before that user license is revoked in your tenant. And so we're going to be looking at some of those benefits as well, because you're going to be able to run some amazing searches and do some reporting on your environment to really know what's going on. And of course, for you admins out there, there's some amazing new tools that Roman's going to be showing you in a few minutes that I think you're just going to absolutely love. Now, there was a series of attacks, just to give you breadth and scope of how powerful hacking is that over $1 billion was stolen in 2 years. This is one attack, okay? So this was a ring of people that were doing this particular attack, and this happened in Europe, actually. It was over $1 billion stolen over a period of 2 years from 100 different banks in 30 countries, okay? And this is primarily in Europe and Eastern Europe is where this took place. And there were some other countries that were affected in Africa, Latin America. And it's amazing what can happen over time. So you've really got to take some new steps in security to protect your financial data, as well as your personal data, or what we refer to as PII, which is your personally identifiable data. So we're going to be chatting about that here in a moment. Now, this particular fact is, I think, maybe shocking or surprising, or maybe to some of you it's not surprising at all and you're wondering how do you protect against this. But oftentimes the data that's leaked, and when we talk about data leakage, we're talking about your users sharing information inadvertently. Like they didn't mean to send this out. They didn't mean to share this credit card number or this bank account number or someone's social security number or their date of birth. They thought they were just doing something innocent, such as just sending correspondence back and forth through email, or they thought they were just writing something in a file because someone else had requested that information. And so it's very easy to give away this personal data. And it's interesting that it's not just a little bit, but almost all of the data that occurs in data leakage happens inadvertently. It's not that your employees are trying to be bad or trying to break the law or trying to violate your security policies. They really just think they're doing their job. And for network administrators and for people that run security in organizations, over the years, this has been quite the challenge. And managing things like protecting that data has been a daunting task. But now with DLP, it's easier than ever. So I can't wait till we dive into that so you can see exactly how that works, because this has been one of the greatest challenges that's happened over time. And so who needs a DLP? Right? So DLP is available for many, many organizations, but there's some specific organizations that need DLP. Okay, so it's organizations that process credit cards and electronic transactions. So, and I don't just mean like you have a swipe machine on your, if you're a retail environment, right? You've got a credit card terminal where you go ahead and swipe. Okay, that's fine. So we're all used to that, and there's certain protocols that go into that. But I'm talking about a traditional invoicing format. So if you're sending out in a traditional procurement process, a request for proposal, someone puts in a proposal, you issue a work order, and then you go ahead and actually collect bank account information, or you collect credit card information, not just from your customers, but from your vendors as well. How is that information being transferred to you? Are they emailing that to you? Is someone giving it over the phone? Are they filling out a secure form online? Or one of the things that happens a lot with the US government is that when you make minor purchases, especially with the SF-182 form, which allows government employees to make purchases through credit cards, because it's limited to their budget within that individual office or division, oftentimes US government employees will end up sending you an Excel sheet that's got 200 credit card numbers for you to process. So how is that data being managed when it's sent out to you? So when we talk about processing credit cards and bank account information, I want you to think beyond just swipe terminals. I want you to think about how your customers and your vendors are interacting with you and sending you data. Where does this stuff sit? Is it in Excel files? Is it sitting in an email? Is it sitting in a chat window through Skype? How is that showing up for you? Okay. And of course, if you store any of that anywhere, and personally identifiable information, and I think just about everyone knows what PII is on the personally identifiable information. But if you don't know, it's essentially where you're collecting personal information about users. So this includes your full legal name. And you might say, well, that's kind of weird because we use full names all over the place. Well, it's full legal name in association with social security numbers, date of births, home addresses, personal telephone numbers, and then any other personal data that may apply to the user. So this could be data related to their status in marriage, their health information. All of that stuff falls categorically under PII and needs to be secured properly. So if you could use this type of data, you absolutely want to implement DLP if you haven't done it yet. And actually, I'm going to be honest with you, I've seen many, many environments where an internal IT team will set up DLP and it's not set up properly. And what I mean by that is they've only turned on the out-of-the-box functions, but they haven't taken the time to write the custom things that they need because they themselves protect data that's a little bit different than just your traditional credit card numbers or PII. So let me give you an example of this, okay? So let's say that you're a health insurance company and you've got unique identifiers, your medical record number for your patients. Well, that unique identifier is now actually PII, even though it's not what it would be traditionally as identified by the US government as PII, but it's now PII for you. So you've got to write a custom script in order to get that done. And this is why having a consultancy like Sequenture come in and actually set that stuff up for you is going to give you a much greater level of protection than just turning on some of the out-of-the-box functions. And there's so much more to this. But again, we're just going to give you a quick overview today, and then certainly we'll take some questions here at the end of this session. So how does DLP work? What exactly does it do? So it does very advanced credit card and PII scanner. And imagine it's like a big brother that sits there on your Office 365 environment that's constantly looking through your emails, your documents, your search history, and everything else to make sure that when that data pops up, that you get the appropriate warnings, letting some users, of course, maybe need the permissions if they're in accounting and finance. Maybe they do need to interact with that set of transactional data. And so you allow those users to do so, but then the other users who shouldn't have access to it and shouldn't be sending that stuff out have that protection as well. So you've got this constant big brother effect that's going on in Office 365 that's powerful and robust and works really, really well. You've also got content classification that's a part of it. And this is really important too, because not all content is created equal, but there's a good chance that the content you do have in your environment matches. So for instance, when you sign contracts, if your contracts include account numbers that really need to be protected or social security numbers or anything of that sort, you want to make sure that those types of content are classified appropriately, and then you've got the rules that are available to you within DLP to help you manage that. Okay. Next up, you've got seamless integration to all of your Office 365 apps and your Office 365 environment. And when I say apps, I'm not just talking about the Word Online, but we're also talking about your full-fledged programs that run on your desktop. So your scanning that happens with DLP actually works across the entire Microsoft Office 365 and Office 2013/2016 environment, depending on where you are right now. And this is really critical because you don't want to just protect one aspect of it. You really need to protect across the board. And once you get DLP up and running, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's like the perfect big brother to protect you and your organization. So I think you guys will really, really love that. The other thing is to make sure that it allows your users to continue working without interrupting business processes. So typically what happens is that when the Sequentia team sits down with you, the first thing is going to be to discover, okay, what kind of content do you have? Where do you collect your PII? Where do you store your financial data? What user groups actually need to manage it? What user groups need the ability to override the warnings that come up, and what user groups absolutely should not be able to override those warnings. So they're going to be limited to say, nope, this email got blocked, you cannot send this out because it contains personal identifiable information. So it'll limit them from sending things out from the outside world. But what's great about the DLP system is that it actually gives users the ability to enter in comments so they can enter in the business justification. So when an override does happen, you're not just flying blind to saying, okay, well, this month we had 25 different instances where users just hit the override button and then they were able to send out email to the outside world with this personal data. In fact, in the system, they'll be able to put in some comments and actually say, hey, yes, here's why I'm sending it. Here's my business justification for it, which allows your IT audits to go much, much smoother. And I just want to take a quick moment here and just mention, if you're not doing a quarterly IT audit, I strongly, strongly suggest that you do. It's one of the things that at Sequentia, they do a really good job of setting you up for IT audits, because this is stuff that you got to check in with all the time. You cannot wait a full year to do your IT audits. You've really got to be doing it on a quarterly basis, and in some environments, if warranted, even on a monthly basis. And so this all becomes a part of that ecosystem for your IT audit, so that way you've got the business intelligence to make the appropriate decisions on what you're going to protect next. Okay. And the other thing that I love, love, love about DLP is that not only does it work on desktop, it works on mobile as well. And of course, so nowadays, just about everyone has a smartphone, and maybe you are or not working on your Office 365. And I've got my SharePoint app here on my phone, which I use every single day. I've got my OneDrive for Business, and I'll use my Word Online, and all of these other different apps that are available for the iPhone and Android environment. And you want that same type of protection on that environment as well. You don't want to just have users say, okay, now that you're on a mobile environment, you're free, you can do whatever you want. No, the same warnings come in, the same ability to override, the same policies go in across the board, and that's going to give you a lot of protection as well to be able to work in both desktop and mobile environments. And then, of course, this is the part that's really, really important, which is that you've got the ability to write your own policies. And you can not only write your own policies, you can also write your own search queries and all sorts of other advanced things. But for most organizations, the out-of-the-box and DLP policies, give you a marginal level of protection, right? So they're going to get you started to protect against the basics, but there's a good chance that your business model and the way that you interact with your data, your information architecture, is going to require a greater deal of control than just what Microsoft is going to give you out of the box. So this is a really critical part to be able to create your own policies as you go along here, okay? And again, if you have any questions that you want to ask now, please feel free to put them in the chat window. There's a group chat available, and then either we can address them along the way, or we will address all of the questions at the end. Now, let's talk a little bit about SharePoint specifically and what else you can do in addition to DLP to help protect that data. Okay, so we're talking about beyond DLP. These are some other things that are really just best practices on how to protect your important information. So one is setting up content approval on the appropriate library. And if you haven't used content approval, essentially what it says is that if I put in information, so I put in an entry into a list, right? So maybe it's transactional data that goes into a list. Before that data is available to everyone on the team, a supervisor or a manager or someone with owner level permissions actually has to hit approve on that content before it shows up for the rest of the team. So this creates the opportunity for your management team or people that have the site owner level permissions to essentially audit that data before it goes live for the rest of the team. So this is commonly used in things like HR policies, finance, in those libraries and lists. And in a library, of course, is where we store our files. So it's very, very handy that when these files become available to the rest of the team, that you do have the ability to audit it, and content approval is a great thing to turn on in those libraries. And there's a little bit more to know about that, but I just want to plant that seed in your mind that that is a feature that's available to you in SharePoint to set up. Okay. Next up, permissions testing. I find it shocking, just absolutely shocking, how many clients set up their SharePoint environment and just assume that the permissions that they have in Active Directory are going to translate directly into what they are going to have in SharePoint. And that's absolutely not the case, because your groups are not always going to be a one-to-one match. Especially in SharePoint, you're creating collaborative spaces where you're going to have users from multiple departments coming in, working on libraries, working on lists, and you need to make sure that stuff works, and you need to make sure that the right people have the right permissions. And permissions testing works both ways. It's not just about making sure that anyone who's not supposed to have access doesn't have access. It's also to ensure that people that should have access actually do have access. It's I find it kind of silly and funny and sad at the same time, where we'll go into a SharePoint environment and someone will say, you know what, I don't know about the SharePoint stuff. I've never been able to use it. And then the person or the team that designed the SharePoint environment and put it together, they're like, well, what do you mean? We've had this thing up for months. And it turns out that the security was set up so tight that the people that actually need to use it don't get to use it. And so you've got to do some permissions testing. And it's not just like, hey, I'm going to set up a test account and we're going to click on a couple of things. There's something really more comprehensive about it. And so this is why you want to make sure that you do a thorough job of permissions testing. It's one of the basic safety protocols of protecting your data. And then the next item is a commonly overlooked feature. A commonly overlooked feature. So what most people will do is they'll say, okay, you know what, in this library, we're going to have documents. They're going to contain PII. They're going to contain some personal information. So we're going to go ahead and secure up this library and really tighten the controls and tighten who has access to it. Okay, fine. So you've done all that. But then what they forget to do is actually protect the indexing. So you leave your search index on, but on the back end, you have this separate database, right, where your search indexes, and that is now left unprotected. So now users can do a search, and all of a sudden in your search results, you're seeing PII, credit card information, and other things that don't show up. So this is one of the reasons why we recommend doing the security testing, doing your IT audits to make sure that this kind of stuff is caught early on, or preferably even in the planning stages, so you don't have that happen to you at all. Okay, so protecting your search index for libraries and lists. And so now I'm going to hand it off to Roman. I'm going to stop doing my video share here. And Roman is going to walk us through just a quick sort of high-level overview of those features And Roman, let me stop my share, and it's all yours.
Okay. Thank you, Mo. Okay, so most of you familiar with Office 365 Management and Security Center. So once you log into 365, which is portal.office.com, you can go directly to protection.office.com. I'm sorry, you guys seeing my screen, right?
No, not yet, Roman. If you can share your screen, please.
I apologize. Okay, I'm having technical difficulties. And share screen. And here we go. There we go. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Nope, can't see your screen. Oh, there it is, Roman. Now it's coming up.
Okay, perfect. All right, so you have seen the Office 365 admin consoles before, I'm sure. If you haven't, you need to log in to portal.office.com and then click here, and you go to admin. And from admin, you can choose, Security and Compliance Center. Security and Compliance Center is where the data loss prevention is. It's going to come up here in a second. Admin centers, security and compliance. So we're essentially looking at two different items here. One of them is data loss prevention policy, which will prevent you from being basically compromised. This is a live protection. Think of it as an antivirus product that constantly runs in the background and searches and weeds out and protects you. Another one is basically being able to find out what you have on your environment that is violating your policy, and we're going into that second. First, we're going to look at the policy. So you click on data loss prevention, you click on policy, and it shows you where you can do policies. We already have two of them, but I'm just going to create another one to show you what a customer would do under normal condition. You create a policy, and you can go ahead and select from several different templates. Financial, medical and health, HIPAA, privacy, you can do custom, let's do financial. And here we go, we can choose different countries, and we can do US financial data. You can also do US FTC rules. And helps detect the presence of information commonly considered financial information in the United States. Credit cards, account information, debit card numbers. So you're looking for three things using regex, which is regular expression, credit card number, bank account number, and routing number. Next, you're going to call it US financial data, call it test. Friendly description, you don't need it. You can go ahead and do all 365, or you can do specific locations. You can, for example, do SharePoint, but not OneDrive. You can choose sites, which sites you want to go ahead and choose. You're going to, for purposes of this demonstration, we're going to choose all sites. And detect when content is shared, people outside your organization, inside your organization. Typically, we recommend setting up two different policies, and you can use advanced settings. But for this purpose, for this demonstration, we do, people, let's say, outside my organization. And here's the next settings. Show policy tips to users and send them email notifications. So when people work in their 365, inside the browser, and they click on a document, it's going to show them a tip. Hey, this file contains potentially compromised information. So that's that's what the tip is about. You can also go ahead and send an email. We typically recommend using the default, but you can also customize it according to your company policy. Emails are HTML format, so they it lets you do some stuff with them. Detect when content is being shared contains. Default is 10 instances of same sensitive file type. That depends on your organizational information. Typically, if your organization does process this data, you are going to get a lot of noise, a lot of emails if you set this to 1, right? But if you really want to be secure, we recommend setting it to 1, and every time something happens, it happens. The thought process behind this, all it needs is 1 to be compromised, and then your reputation of your organization is ruined if somebody, leaks the data, But default is 10, so we leave it at 10. And here's another one: block people from sharing or restrict access to the content. So an example I'm going to show you in a little while. As an admin, I see certain files in SharePoint and OneDrive You can see there, this is the files that we set up before, and you can see that they contain credit card information. Has the names, has the credit card numbers, date of birth, social security numbers. If I log in as the regular user to the same account, this is a regular user account and a let's say SharePoint. These documents are not being shown at all. They're basically hidden from the view. So apologize for this. So as you see, they're not even being shown. You can see the other two, but not those. So this is where the policy is set. You can go ahead and override the policy. We do recommend, depending on the policy of your organization, to let them override if they're internal, and do not let them override if they're external, unless you have a compelling reason, to do it. There's a checkbox as require business justification to override. Basically, if you want to share the document from accounting to HR, for example, and it contains some social security number, it's going to say, hey, you need to provide business justification, which might be reviewed later. And you can go ahead and type in, I need to share new hire employee information with human resources. You can also report someone as false positive. You can say, yep, false positive checkbox, and then they go ahead and automatically will do it. Now, this thing we're sharing with outside organizations, so like I said, we don't recommend them to be shared at all. So you do block, and like I said, this documents is simply not seen. Next item is, how do you turn this thing on? Well, default is, obviously, let's turn it on right away. You'd like to test it out first, show policy in test mode, and you can test it out. We strongly recommend doing that because, we have seen examples when people go cavalier through this, and then half of the files gone missing, and then it doesn't look good. At the end, you do next and finish and create, and there it goes. In reality, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes for it to propagate through your files, so don't expect for it to show right away. We have several policies that we have set up already, so we can demonstrate to you what it looks like on the back end. For example, I'm going to bring up my email, and I'm going to set up a new email. I'm going to send it to Mo's personal account, his business account, and I'm going to do test create card. And I'm going to attach a file from OneDrive where it contains the violations, the same document that I brought in that contains the credit card information. We can double check to make sure that this is in fact the same document. And here we go. Mo Hassan is unauthorized to receive this type of information. Conflict with policy organization. It wouldn't even let me send it out. So this is what we're looking for. In the first, when you turn the policy on, sometimes it will send it, and it will let you go, but in reality, it doesn't arrive. The next thing to test, and this is the one I wanted to show you, is perhaps this is not a good demo, but I mean, we did set it up in such a way that you can go ahead and do share. I'm an admin, so I can go ahead and share it easily. Oops, I apologize for this. Let me see where I got off the rails here. You can just select this one and do share. And go ahead and send it to Mo Hassan. Let me just get his email address. Sorry. Mo, can you tell me your email address?
Send it to Mo at Intupower, Mo at INTU Power.
And there we go. Require sign in, and then I click on share. Because I'm an admin, it's going to let me share it. User simply will not see it. But in reality, this thing will never arrive. And I'm going to have an alert in my email in a minute or two that I attempted to share, which I'll bring up to you once it comes up. Here is the alert that came when I tried to send the earlier one, and I'll show you in a second the what alert looks like. This is one of the early alerts, that when you try to send it, an admin gets an alert as part of the policy that we set up. Hey, somebody tried to share it. So this is where you have to kind of customize the policy when you do it. Here's going to look at the US financial data that we already set up. We do have two rules here, and it's inside high, outside high, high count, and if you look at the edit rule, you can set up instance count, how many, so for purpose of this demonstration and to show and demonstrate the most stringent type of policy created, we set up as one. But you can go ahead and set it to, just click on it and set it to like 20, 30 if you want to avoid false positives. I mean, one is one, and probably for inside of your organization, you could relax rules a little bit. For outside, like I said, we recommend going high. And this is where, you can do security level for alert, and, use incident reports, who gets it, name of the person, et cetera, et cetera. But be aware, that if your organization does a lot of credit card processing, have a lot of specific type of information going back and forth, you can go ahead and, get overwhelmed, it becomes useless. So, it requires some tweaking. Therefore, when you do, first time you publish the policy, doing test usually works well. Okay, so far, if you have any questions about it, we'll take question and answer in a minute or two. But that's basically going through the policy. Now, what kind of data, people ask a lot, what kind of data can you go for when you go ahead and set up the type of do manual stuff? Manual, selection. You can edit types. There's 51 types that you can go ahead and add, and actually 81. Microsoft has increased it. You have Australia, Belgium, Canada. Typically here, US, UK passport number, driver's license number. A lot of our customers asking, can you do custom form? Let's say do a contract, something, and yes, you can. It requires using PowerShell, download XML file, edit it, and upload it back up to your 365 portal. Have something called IP address. Okay, so that covers the area of how system does protection, against the ongoing leakage and loss. Let's say you want to go ahead and see what you have already. So you can go on the search investigation and admin portal. You need to do content search or e-discovery, and you have to set up a new case. More people forget, you have to add yourself as permissions to do e-discovery manager. By default, nobody edit, so you have to go ahead and edit this and add yourself. It takes about an hour to propagate. And after it's propagated, you'll be able to run the search.
Will it scan Adobe PDF documents? And Cedric, as you can see here, what he was just showing you was inside a PDF. So that data was inside a PDF. The thing to remember is it'll only scan through OCR'd PDF. So it's something that if it was just literally scanned in as a PDF and you didn't go through the OCR process, then no, that would not work. But if it is OCR'd or it was made electronically, then yes, it will scan. Thanks, Sherman. Please continue.
Okay, so that's, and you can also do content search, and like I said, it's going to search both OneDrive, SharePoint, and 360, and your Exchange 365. A lot of other questions people ask is, will it work if you have on-prem Exchange? Well, if you have hybrid mode, yes. If you don't, it's not. So you do have to have some kind of hybrid combination. All right, so it's 10:40. We have 5 minutes left. Do you want to do question and answer? Are there any more questions?
Questions in the chat window. If you would want to put in your questions in the chat window, please feel free to do that now. Or if you'd like to take yourself off of mute, you're welcome to do that as well. And we'll be happy to take some questions here.
Okay. Important thing to remember, if you set it to testing, it's safe. Just go ahead and enable now, because it makes some, as you see, like you do not see the documents. They're gonna say, where are my documents? So.
we had another question come up, and this is this included with E5? And the answer is yes, that you do get the Microsoft DLP with E5 edition of Office 365. Okay, and we have a question from Amy Jones. If the user is unable to see the documents, won't they think it's deleted? And so, Amy, that's a really good question. This is one of the things that we cover in training, is to let the users know that, look, if you think a file is supposed to be somewhere and you don't see it, the general rule of thumb is in SharePoint, it doesn't mean that the file doesn't exist. Typically, it means you don't have permissions to see it, because you can do, and this relates to another topic of when you set up a target audience, you can actually use target audience to make specific files visible in a library or certain entries visible in a list. And so that is part of a target audience feature. So it's part of a greater SharePoint conversation that we cover in training. So hopefully that answers your question.
And the short answer is yes.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
Let me see if anything. Okay. No other questions yet. And so while we're waiting for other questions to come in, on the screen, you'll see our email addresses. So if you want to discuss anything related to your training needs, please feel free to send me an email directly at mo@intupower.com. And certainly Roman is always available, I think 24/7. The man never sleeps. He's always working to make sure his clients are happy. So that's also available. And we have another question that came up, which is, do you have to use Azure Active Directory? So Roman, I'm going to pass that one to you. Do you have to use Azure Active Directory?
No. Ours. I mean, you do have it as a test, but right now most of our clients have we have tier 6 with our ADF for our own domain that for the demo that I did.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Lots of good questions from Cedric. All right. And let's see, we've got just about 1 minute left, and both myself and Roman will stay on for an additional 5 minutes. So that way, if you do have something else you want to chat about, we'd be happy to chat with you while we're still on this webinar. But we're going to just wrap up the webinar officially in just another minute. So again, any other questions, we would be more than happy to address them.
And thank you so much for attending. And if you guys have any SharePoint needs, development needs, and especially training, because you can see more, he's a great expert. I mean, every customer recommended him to go do the SharePoint Office 365 training. There's lines to see him, you know, literally lines. People want to see him. So if you guys want, his email address is on the presentation screen right now.
Okay, great. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for attending this particular webinar. We hope you learned some new interesting things, and definitely we want to light a fire under your tushy to make sure that you're excited about security, you're excited about protecting your data, and so it'll help you out in the long run and help you save lots and lots of money. So thank you for attending. Thank you, Roman, for organizing this and putting this on and inviting me to attend as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mike.